The University of Minnesota recently held a seminar with the intent to try and help white people recover and regain their full humanity. Recover from being white, I suppose? I'm not entirely sure, but this entire thing is ridiculous. The name of the series overall was Deconstructing and Decentralizing Whiteness in Practice, a 3-part series. And the first part right here was titled Recovery from White Conditioning, Building Anti-Racist Practice and Community. This session was led by, you probably guessed it, a white lady, because there are countless white ladies who are just ready and waiting to say that white people as a whole are part of a white supremacist worldview, or a whiteness-centered worldview, or any number of things speaking negatively about white people. And yes, I'm looking at you, Robin DiAngelo. You started this is your fault. Specifically, this seminar, as I already said, is titled Recovering from White Conditioning, and it taught white people how to use a 12-step program, similar to Alcoholics Anonymous, to recover and reclaim our full humanity. So I suppose that means that we as white people need to recover from being white, and that only in doing so will we gain our full humanity. Now, I don't know about you, but saying someone is not fully human based on their race, that kind of seems racist to me, but I digress. When talking about this program, the leader of the session quoted Bell Hooks, saying that, quote, imperialist white supremacist capitalist patriarchy is the power structure underlying the social order. And that is essentially the epitome of the woke left. You just take all of these words like capitalism, patriarchy, indigenous people, colonization, imperialism, you just smoosh them all together into one sentence, and it becomes everything wrong with America, which is essentially what's happening here. Now, before we actually look at the 12 steps involved in how we can recover from our whiteness, first I want to show that at least she is willing to practice what she preaches. I didn't watch the entirety of this webinar because it's over an hour long, but I was watching a little bit of it and I saw something that kind of jumped out at me. And that is where she portrayed an image of herself and said the face of white supremacy. I don't see my face there, I see her face. Maybe that means she needs the program more than I do. She was essentially saying at this point that when she first heard about a white supremacist worldview and all of those buzzwords, that she was kind of taken aback and she didn't really agree with it. But now she realizes that was just her ego, and I guess she accepts it, enough to put this image in her presentation. So at least she's brave, I guess? If you want to watch the entire webinar, go ahead, but keep in mind this is only part 1. There are 3 parts, and if the other 2 parts are any indication, you're in for a long watch. So now let's just look very briefly at the actual 12-step program. So step 1, we admitted that we have been socially conditioned by the ideology of white supremacy, which is a phrase that's pretty similar to things that Robin DiAngelo says. As a white person, you are automatically part of this white supremacist culture. Even if you don't want to be, even if you don't think you are in fact part of it. You just can't stop that. Step 2, we came to believe that we could embrace our ignorance as an invitation to learn. So that's saying that, oh, maybe I am part of a white supremacist culture, let's learn about it. Step 3, we develop support systems to keep us engaged in this work. So I guess that would work if you have friends who consistently call you a racist, maybe? Step 4, we journeyed boldly inward, exploring and acknowledging ways in which white supremacist teachings have been integrated into our minds and spirits. Not only are your actions white supremacist actions, but your mind and your spirit even are those of white supremacy. It's so deeply ingrained, it's part of your soul, I guess. Step 5, we confessed our mistakes and failings to ourselves and others. Step 6, we were entirely ready to deconstruct previous ways of knowing, as they have been developed through the lens of white supremacy. So anything you think you might know, if it goes against this idea of anti-racism, it's not actually true. You have to get rid of that, discard it, because it was obtained through the lens of white supremacy. If you don't agree with people like her, Robin DiAngelo, Ibram Kendi, you're just in the wrong. Step 7, we humbly explored new ways of understanding, proactively seeking out new learning and reconstructing a more inclusive sense of reality. Again, pretty much a reiteration of what we just saw. If you think anything against the anti-racist ideas, then you're just plain wrong and you have to reimagine them. You have to come up with a new idea that aligns with them. Step 8, we committed ourselves to ongoing study of our racial biases, conscious or unconscious, and our maladaptive patterns of white supremacist thinking. So now we're getting into deconstructing the white supremacist thinking as a whole. Step 9, we developed strategies to counteract our racial biases. Step 10, we embrace the responsibility of focusing on our impact more than our intentions in interactions with people of color. This is one that frustrates me to no end, and I see it time and time again when it comes to things like this in anti-racism. Yes, impact certainly matters, but it doesn't negate the intention. Many of these people are saying that impact is more important than intention. Virtually anything I do can have an impact. Just because you are impacted by it doesn't mean that I was in the wrong. Let's say I'm walking down the street. I see someone walking towards me, they're a girl, I smile at them because I'm trying to be friendly and I say hi. Maybe they think that I was sexually harassing them or something like that. So they're impacted because they think I was being a jerk. That is not on me, that's their interpretation. Their interpretation does not necessarily attribute anything to me or my malice. This is absurd. Just because someone is impacted by something I say or do does not mean I am responsible for it necessarily. You have to look at the intention, you have to look at the context. All of that is important, but not if you want to be an anti-racist. You see, if you're an anti-racist, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, if someone who is a person of color is impacted or offended, then you are just in the wrong. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, you're wrong. Even if it's something ridiculous, like apparently saying sexual preference is now offensive, it doesn't matter your intention. The impact was there, and so it's an offensive thing, and I guess we can't say it anymore. At least that's what Amy Coney Barrett found out just recently. Step 11, we engage in daily practices of self-reflection. And step 12, this is the last one here. We committed ourselves to sharing this message with our white brothers, sisters, and siblings in order to build a supportive recovery community and to encourage personal accountability within our culture. So that one reads a little bit like a multi-level marketing scheme that once you are part of the system, you need to then share it with everyone else so they can be part of a system too. But then it also says specifically sharing it with your white brothers, sisters, and siblings. So maybe it sounds more a little bit like a cult. Now that you're part of the anti-racist cult, you should invite other white people so they too can become part of the anti-racist cult. And you can only be part of it if you admit that you are in fact a white supremacist. So I guess people like Richard Spencer would actually fit in quite well because I think he admits it openly. It's amusing to recognize the similarities between those who claim they are anti-racist and the actual racist, because there are plenty of them. Now, maybe I'm just getting deja vu, but I feel like I talked about something similar earlier this week at a different university. You see, recently President Trump has mentioned that critical race theory and talking about white supremacists being the central part of the United States, things like that should not be taught in universities. And I remember the media and many on the left saying things like that aren't even happening. What are you talking about? He's just making up crap. And now we have our second example in less than a week at two different universities showing that he was actually right. That's literally what this is. Looking over these steps was kind of just like reading Robin DiAngleo's book all over again, and I have PTSD from that because that was a bad book. If you haven't seen my video on it, go ahead and check it out. I'm sorry, it's not that great, but that's because her book didn't give me a lot to work with. The book really sucked. Anyway, what are your thoughts about this? It seems like more and more universities are taking on things like this, which is fairly ridiculous. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.